Well, it is an honor to be here with Jennifer Butler, who is the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Workforce Development Board in Pennsylvania, someone I've gotten to know as a result of our work with the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Association, and most recently, an opportunity to work with our amazing staff. So, just want to say welcome, Jennifer. We're going to be obviously having a conversation about self care, but just welcome.
Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Yes, yes, indeed. And it's my hope that this conversation will be sort of an inspiration for those who are attending the conference in this critical area that we all know is important to the teams nowadays, leaders and staff in workforce development with all that we have to deal with. So I want to start off by just making a statement. Um, and then I'm going to just ask if you get your thoughts on a few things, because one thing I say quite a bit is, it's very hard to pour into out to others when your tank is empty. And I think right now, with so many demands on workforce development, people are still trying to, we get back to this whole thing of getting people back to work, and we're not fully out of it yet, even though we're seeing progress. From your perspective, how important is the self care in the middle of all of this? Like, what would you say, as a leader in workforce development in Pennsylvania, what role self care helps in dealing with some of the stuff we're seeing today?
Well, I think to a great extent, self care has always been important in workforce development. And I
Yeah.
think, a lot of that is because we have dual responsibilities. We are responsible for the economic development in a community by working with our employers, but we are also responsible for every career seeker that is unemployed or underemployed, making sure that they have a path forward and that they have a livable wage. And those dual responsibilities also come with dual sources of stress.
Yes.
And I think, the big difference now is those moments of joy that we can still find, but
Mhm.
could find more readily
Mhm.
pre-pandemic. Those moments to decompress
Mhm.
have become so much more complicated, and
Mhm.
they come at a cost. They come at a time cost that a lot of us don't feel like we can sacrifice right now.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I love how you said moments of joy, because when so much is going on, how do you slow down and find those moments? You're balancing and juggling all these balls. And but it's necessary. We got to try to find ways to do that. In the midst of it, our clients are dealing with a lot of trauma, I'm sure, as a result of the pandemic. So we've heard this term secondary trauma response, where people kind of feel it, and another term is compassion fatigue, that people feel from time to time because of it. So my second question to you is, what do you see as challenges in self-care? We kind of mentioned it a little bit. What are some of the challenges to self-care in our industry that you see, workforce development?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about compassion fatigue, I think also there's a lot of guilt
Yeah.
when it comes to self-care, particularly right now.
Hmm.
Taking that time for yourself
Hmm.
is, something that you have to really do almost mindfully to
Yes.
make sure that your tank is full.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of that just comes from the fact that we are dealing with unprecedented need. And I use the word unprecedented, um, knowing that sometimes I say that and make a joke about how often I use that word. And the fact is, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now are issues that we had been planning for. We had been planning for an aging workforce. We
Yes.
had been planning to meet the needs of our opportunity youth and young adults. We
Mhm.
had been planning to tackle issues around mental health and the opioid epidemic. Those are things that we were working toward. We were working with our gig workers to find the best path forward. And then all those best laid plans seemingly, and I say seemingly because I'm optimistic, came crashing down in March of 2020.
Yes.
And we found ourselves, having to really kind of think quickly to handle crises that just kept coming up and still to some extent are still coming up as we're also trying to replan that way forward.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something. It's just, I remember March 2020 very well. My world came crashing down too, because everything just stopped, and we're business where we're interacting with people and training and coaching, and that all crashed because of it. So you just think about the effect of that time period on so many people. But fortunately, I would say in this industry, many of us came together and were able to do some neat things to kind of continue to inspire each other during those times, which is thank goodness for that. So we had a chance to work with your team and
Yes.
come in and do some self-care training and think tanking and all kinds of fun. What are a few takeaways that you kind of got from our time together? And I know I loaded you with a lot,
Yeah.
but
I think for me personally, my
yeah,
greatest takeaway was that idea that self-care is not selfish.
yes.
And when I, I go back to that concept of guilt of when you try to find moments of joy or even moments to decompress
Hmm.
and begin to think of all the needs that need to be filled
Yeah.
at the same time, knowing that it's okay to take that minute. I know the exercise where you actually had us take a minute, and some of us just couldn't even do that. That
Breathing
was a wake up
exercise.
call for
Yeah.
me, not just for me personally, but
Yeah.
but knowing how much of a struggle that was for our workforce team and our stakeholders and partners in Montgomery County, knowing that 1 minute was so difficult for so many of us to just
Yeah.
take to breathe.
Breathe.
um,
Hmm.
I think was a wake up call
Yeah.
that all of us really needed at that time. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that.
I remember Terry said when we were asking for feedback, she said the most difficult time was the 60 seconds seemed to be a long time.
It was the longest minute.
I thought that was pretty neat. When she says, yeah, but it's the truth. And again, it goes back to what I said in the session as well. And that is we're in the helps industry. And when you're in the helps industry, all you do is help. I mean, you just constantly pour out. So to slow down, so wait a minute, let me look in this mirror. Hey, me too. What about me? It's so thank you. That was a really good takeaway from that session. And lastly, we are going to be sharing some this session at the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Association's conference, not in this context because of the time frame, but what would be some advice you would give to your peers throughout the state that are leading organizations as it relates to self-care, the need for it, and helping their teams to kind of put some systems in place, within their organizations?
Well, I think it's that reminder that self-care is not selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And even more so that it's critical. It's critical now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also just the reminder that we are all navigating this, uncharted territory together.
Yes.
And, we spend a lot of time sharing best practices, sharing plans, but we don't often take that time to share each other's stories and struggles. And I know I'm looking forward to the conference
Yeah.
primarily for that opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to really have some real conversations about things that are happening for us locally, but things that are happening statewide and how we can plan that forward together.
Yes.
And just, I think, remember that none of us are alone, that we're all here together.
All here together. Well, thank you. True, great leadership insight there. I too, I train a lot at the conference, but I grow and learn too, and get energized by the interaction. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there again at the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Association. It's my hope that not just for the sake of our workshop, but in general, that self-care comes up in the conversations that various people may have and what they're doing to try to inspire each other. Because, like you said, we're all going through it together. So. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time. I know you're a
Absolutely.
busy lady, but I appreciate you taking time, and we'll see you soon. Thank
Okay.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mhm.